Welcome back. As you can see, I'm still in my sock shirt. I recorded two of these at the same time. I try and record a few of them at a time. Again, this is William. I'm attempting to teach the entire Bible, or at least as much as I can get to. This will be chapters 18 and 19. I really hope you enjoyed 16 and 17. And if you haven't watched any of them going forward, I try and keep the content of each chapter as they go through the next chapter. So you may seem lost if you jump in, but hopefully you can still learn something from this. If you haven't watched my videos before, I recommend that you pause and to read the context, read the Bible itself. Even more important than listening to me is reading the Bible. So I would recommend you do that. So I would pause, read chapter 18 as well as chapter 19. This is going to be after chapters 18 and 19, and then begin to listen if you choose to do so. So here is chapter 18. The Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. This is Abraham, okay? And as he sat at the door of this tent in the heat of the day, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent. He ran from the tent door and met them and bowed himself to the earth and said, "Lord, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Yet a little water be brought and wash your feet. Rest yourselves under the tree. Rest yourselves under the tree while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass by. Since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham went quickly into his tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 sheels of fine flour, knead it, and make cakes." And Abram ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds, milk, and a calf he had prepared, and set it before them, and as he stood by them under the tree while they were there. Now, so basically what happens is these 3 people show up, these 3 men, and Abram says, "I'm your servant." Doesn't tell you who these 3 people are. And it just said, and he went out and he asked his wife to make bread. And then he had one of his servants prepare a calf, and he had curds and milk. And so he prepared this all for these men. We don't know who these men are, at least not yet. If you already read, maybe you do. Verse 9, then he said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years, and the way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. And so Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, Shall I indeed bear a child, now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At that appointed time I will return to you about the time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied it, laughing. I did not laugh, so Sarah was afraid. He said, "No, but you did laugh." So basically these 3 guys are now telling, that you will have, he's telling Abram again, you will have a child in a year. Sarah laughs when she hears this because she's, again, 90 years old. Abraham is 99. And Sarah's like, "I'm not going to do that." And then they confronted Sarah about it. And Sarah's like, "I never said that. I never laughed." When in fact they know she did. Okay. Again, the promise is being fulfilled by God. So even though they might laugh and say, not believe God, and I think Abraham did at this point, but Sarah doesn't, because she's 99 or 90 years old and she doesn't think she can have a child. We know from most women can stop having children around, I don't know what exactly age, but 40, I would guess 45. I know there are some who have had children older, and it happens, but it's very uncommon. The older you get, the less common it is to have a child, right? And I'm not, and so she laughs. So verse 16, Then the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. And Abram said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Saying that Abram shall surely become great and multiple nation, and the nation of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him, and keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abram what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, Because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, their sin is a very grave. I will go down to see whether they have done what they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me, and if not, I will know. So these men are now going to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, to find out what's going on. We've probably heard a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to hear more about this as we go on. So in verse 22, it says, The men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abram stood before the Lord, and Abram drew near and said, Will you indeed sweep away the righteous from the wicked? Suppose there are, okay, so basically he keeps saying Lord, okay, and he's referring to them as Lord. Now, I don't know, it is Lord all capitals, okay, and typically when the Lord is all capitals in the Bible, it means Lord, Yahweh, God, okay. So God is Abraham and God are communicating, but he knows these three guys are going down to Sodom, and they're probably going as representatives of God. So God is leading them there, but Abraham is talking to God because Abraham knows that these people are going there to Sodom and Gomorrah, and which we may not have talked about this before. I don't remember, but Lot, his nephew and household, are now in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Sodom and Gomorrah are a very wicked, anti-God place. Like, they do everything you can imagine and things you can imagine. And so they're going there to see what the situation is. And Abraham has this idea, I think, that God's going to judge them or maybe destroy them, which we will learn in the next few chapters. So verse 22, So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abram still stood before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city, will you then sweep away the place not spared for the 50 righteous who are in there? Far be it for me to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death, and with the wicked, so that righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just. And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for your sake. I'm going to read the rest of this, and then I'm going to explain it. Abraham answered and said, Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. I am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city in the lack of 5? And he said, I will not destroy if there is 45 there. Again he spoke to him and said, Suppose 40 are found there. He answered, For the sake of the 40, I will not do it. Then he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. He answered, I will not do it, if I find 30 there. He said, Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. He answered, For the sake of the 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, Oh, not let the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose there are 10 there. He answered, For the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it. And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So Abraham's getting this idea that God's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, which is what he's planning on doing. And Abraham gets in this discussion with God, which shows the confidence that Abraham has with God. And God is somebody you can communicate with. And he's saying, for the sake, if there's 50 righteous people, will you spare the city? and God says, I will spare the city if there's 50. And he brings them all the way down to 10. So God is saying, if there's at least 10 people that are righteous, I will spare the city. But there isn't even 10 people who are righteous. In fact, the only person that I can recall that God considers righteous there is Lot, and even he doesn't act in righteousness and righteous. And we'll see about Lot's wife. She's not really that righteous either. So there's a lot of issues here. So there's only going to be one person, and God is not going to spare the city. Okay. And so this is what Abraham is doing with God, trying to talk him out of it. Now, it says that if God finds, okay, it doesn't mean that God doesn't know, okay? God knows exactly how many are righteous, how many isn't. He knows everything that goes on all the time. There isn't like God goes, it's like we talked about in Adam in the Garden of Eden. God said, where are you, Adam and Eve? God knows everything. But I don't know if the people then knew that. And I think Abraham's hoping that if God figures out that there's 10 people, he's really trying to spare Lot's life and Lot's family's life, I think. But Abraham also, again, God just put love into Abram's name. So now Abraham, I think, is a loving person more so than he was before. And now he's worried about those people. And he wants to be able to deliver them and make them all right with God, which I think is admirable for Abraham in this case, okay? Now we're going to jump into chapter 19, which will take us the rest of the time. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. You know what? Yeah, okay. Lot saw them. He rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then they may rise up early and go on their way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, so he turned aside to them and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread that they ate. Now, we don't know who it says two angels, and now they're saying these two angels eat. Okay, so I think a lot of people think angels can't eat. They can eat. It's not the same sense of how we eat and digest, just like there's these three guys in the last chapter that Abraham prepares a meal for. They have the capacity to eat, just like I think we'll have the capacity to eat in heaven. It's just they don't have the dietitious or the digestive system that we have. So I don't think they would have an issue like going to the bathroom, so to speak, if they call that. Okay, so they have the ability to eat. Maybe it sounds strange that an angel can eat, but they can eat, and we will eat in heaven. The Bible says that we will eat from the tree of life and the tree of not tree of knowledge of good and evil anymore, but we will eat from the tree of life, and there will be a feast in heaven. The Bible talks about, and I think we will continue to eat, but it won't be eating for survival. It'll be eating for pleasure and enjoyment. Okay. But anyways, these two guys show up, and Lot says, "Stay with me," and they're like, "No, we understand the town square," and Lot persists, and they end up staying with Lot. Okay, verse 4. But before they laid down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house, and they came to Lot. "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." One translation actually says, "make sport of them." Lot went to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him. He said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly, because behold, I have two daughters who have known no any man. Let me bring them to you, to do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot, and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into his house with them and shut the door. And they were struck with blindness, and the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so they wore themselves out groping for the door. Crazy story, okay, so far. So these two men are there. Then the people of Sodom, who are very wicked, everybody in Sodom are very wicked. They want to make sport of these two witnesses, these two angels, which they don't think they realize they're angels. And they basically want to mistreat them, okay? any time of way you can imagine, sexually, everything. They'll mistreat them. And Lot, being the righteous man that he is, which is really not righteous, he says, no, don't touch these two men, but you can have my two daughters who are both virgins and do what you want with them. Wow, what a guy. Really a great dad. Save these two men, but you can have my daughters. That's a little crazy if you ask me. Well, the two angels protect Lot and his daughters. They close the door, they seal the door so nobody can get in, and then they cause all the people to become blind, and they get really tired just trying to find the doorknob. Okay, this is how crazy this is. So these witnesses, these two angels have the power to make humans blind, okay, which is crazy. Verse 12, then the man said to Lot, have you anyone else here, son-in-laws, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of this place, for we are about to destroy this place, because of the outcry against the people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-laws, who were married to his daughters, go. I never noticed that. It says his daughters were married, but up here it says, maybe I misread that thing. Maybe his daughters weren't virgins. Maybe I misunderstood that. I didn't notice that when I was reading this, so obviously I can make mistakes too, unless he has more daughters than the two. It says, behold, I have two daughters who have not known any man. So he obviously has more daughters. Okay, so he had two daughters that were virgins, and he had other daughters. Again, so it's important to understand context and to read through context, and I obviously missed that, and I do that, and people do that. So he has other daughters who are now married. Okay, where are we at? So then he says, go, or get up out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his sons-in-laws to be jesting. So his sons-in-law thought he was kidding. He's like, sure, God's not going to do that. That's crazy. Then then we're verse 15. As morning drew dawn, the angel urged Lot, saying, get up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here. Again, two daughters who are here. It's not the only two daughters, the daughters that are here. Lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city. But he lingered. So the men seized him and took his wife and the two daughters by the hand. The Lord, being merciful to him, brought him out and set him outside the city. As they brought him out and said, escape for your life. Do not look back and stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away. Lot said to them, oh no, my lords, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life, but I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, this city is near enough to flee. It is a little one. Let me escape there. It is not a little one, and my life will be saved. And he said to them, behold, I grant you the favor also, that I will not overthrow the city from which you have spoken. Escape there quickly, for I have nothing till I arrive there. Therefore the name of the city is called Zoar. So basically, the angel tells Lot to get out of there with his wife, his children that are still at the house, or at least anybody he could grab. And he says, go to this one place. Lot doesn't want to go there. He wants to go somewhere else, and they allow him to go. I think the reason Lot doesn't want to go there is because God's trying to deliver him into to where he could do things that are right, but Lot has a tendency to do what's evil, and so now he's going to go to a new city that's not as good. So verse 23, the sun had risen on the earth, then Lot came to Zoar, then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord on heaven. He overthrew these cities and all the valley and the inhabitants of the city and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife, so they're still heading to Zoar, but this calamity is happening. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Literally, she looked back at Sodom and Gomorrah and became salt, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah and towards the land of the valley, and he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent out Lot from the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which he had lived. Now Lot went up to Zoar and lived in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. So he didn't actually go to Zoar, he lived in a cave near Zoar because he was afraid. And the firstborn said to the younger, okay, we're going to get into that in just a second. So this may be a few more minutes. Sorry, this is going longer than 20 minutes. I didn't want that to happen. But the reason she looks back because she liked the city. She liked what the city did. She would rather look back towards sin than look towards God. And God was like, no, you keep going forward. That's what the angels told him. You go forward. And this is kind of what we should be doing as Christians, as followers of God. We should be looking towards God, looking away from sin, looking away from the pleasures of this world. But what we do is we have a tendency to look back at the pleasures of this world. And this is what Lot's wife does. And she ultimately turns into a pillar of salt. It's part of her judgment. So she then dies. Okay. Now we're going to see what Lot's daughters do. And which shows you how, even though God considered Lot righteous and saved Lot, his family was not. And they were also raised in this wicked place. And so they experienced the wicked stuff. And now you're going to see what Lot's daughters do real quick. Now Lot went up to Zoar and lived in the hill. Oh, okay, I read that already. Okay, so verse 31. And the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, and we will preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine at night, for the firstborn went in and laid with her father, and he did not know she laid down, and when she arose the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I laid last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine again tonight. Then they will go in and lie with him, and that you may also. The younger arose and laid with him in the night, and and did not know that she had laid down. He did not know that they had laid down when he arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and named him Moab, and he is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son. She called him Ben-Alma. He is the father of the it's Ben-Amma. And the father of the Amorites this day. So to end this, you see again, Lot's family isn't very righteous. Lot's wife is now dead because she turned back. Most of the family stayed in Sodom and Gomorrah and got completely destroyed because they didn't believe Lot that God was going to judge them. And then the 2 daughters that he was able to save, who were both virgins, said there was nobody we can be with, meaning they can't marry anybody and have children. So what they do is 2 nights in a row, they get their father drunk, and they lay with their father and basically have sex with their father, and they both produce children from their father. So their children are not only Lot's sons, but they're also Lot's grandsons, if that's crazy. That is crazy. It shows you the depravity of man. This is just 19 chapters into Genesis. It shows you how this craziness that goes on, and this is how people are, but God is, again, still faithful to what he says. He says he will deliver the righteous, he will protect the righteous, even though we don't think that Lot is righteous and he doesn't show that he's righteous. God sees him that way, and that's the beauty thing. Even though we may sin and struggle and fall short of God's standard, God sees us as righteous because he sees us. He doesn't see us, he sees Jesus, and we'll get into more of that later. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something new from this, and I will see you in the next one.